Hello! Welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 95. This episode has been like Animorph, changing constantly between what I want it to be, but I think a rather key event that happened last week will be informing the episode. We're going to talk about Akira Toriyama and Chrono Trigger today. But before we do that, we've got a lot of pickups to go through, so let's get started on collecting 3 different videos on my pickups, because I've gotten a lot in the last couple weeks. Lots of pickups today. Apparently I found the magical season where so many things are on sale for PS5. But first, before we get into a whole slew of those, I picked up these Splatoon 3 side order stickers from my Nintendo. I got a Zelda backpack as well as part of that order because they gave me a birthday code. But I don't really feel like it's that exciting to share, so I'm just gonna not. So, I got 6 PS5 games. 4 of them are here now. 2 of them will be at the end of the pickup session. First, I got the Trinity Trigger Day 1 edition, which is still available. And that came with the game. There we go. Came with a 2-disc soundtrack, and Hiroki Kikuta was the composer. And then it's got a nice art book, decent size. I thought Trinity Trigger looked pretty neat when I was seeing some previews of it last year, so I'm hoping that I like it. I got Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I've not played a Yakuza Like a Dragon game, but this one just looks like it might be my jam. Based on what I've seen, it's goofy, it's weird. It's got a crazy taxi thing. I could play Virtua Fighter 3 TB. I'll give it a shot. And then I got the Rhapsody Deluxe Edition and Tsuchiya, the Oleti Edition. I finally got the Dead Space remake. It was at a price where I was content to get it. And I got the Mr. Gimmick big freaking box of stuff. Alright, so we got a little guy. Look how cute he is. He's adorable. I'll have to find a home for him. And then I think everything else is hiding in this little mini box. So that includes the actual game itself. And then there's a mini Mr. Gimmick cart. A little pen, the soundtrack, and probably the biggest reason I got this is this fake Mr. Gimmick NES-sized replica. It has no chip in it, but for the purposes of Femtendo, this is an expensive game to buy, and I don't really want to spend, let's see, the cart for the Famicom version of Gimmick started at 1,000. That's the cart, not complete, just the cart. So I'm pretty content not fussing around with that. And then inside is more soundtrack, even more. On a mini disc, which I am sure is just going to go over splendidly with my disc drive, trying to get stuff off of it. But yeah, so when we get to Gimmick in the 90s books, it will be this. It will be cheating, I'm well aware, but I'm making concessions, and this was a lot cheaper to go for than, as I just stated, the actual thing. So yeah, that's that's the end of that. Alright, I got one last wave of pickups by the time this video was made. Because I kept changing my mind on what the topic was going to be. So I got the Monarch edition of Unicorn Overlord. I've already opened it, I pulled everything out, so it comes with the game, which also had a code for Vanillaware doohickeys. Don't remember. Comes with a 2-disc, 16-bit arranged music album, which is interesting. I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't really listened to the core soundtrack. I played the demo for like 10 minutes before I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. And was content. It came with a pretty decent sized art book. And then this is the cool thing. There's a card game that they threw in here. And I haven't really opened it too much. But it looks a little complicated. You've got cards and pouches and directions with comics and all kinds of stuff, which I think is just kind of a cool bonus. And I will look into seeing how that all works with somebody who might want to play a silly card game with me. Chrono Trigger. What an incredible game. My second favorite game of all time. One that I could put as my number one if I really, really thought about it. It's something that I could consider my favorite game of all time. And one of the reasons why I like Chrono Trigger so much is because of its character design. So this is a Super Famicom box. I got this several years ago. This was my first actual import that I ever had. I don't even remember where I got it from. I'm sure it was from a forum. But it's complete. It's got a manual. It's got all the stuff inside it. And I also have it on the DS. And through means, I technically have it on the Wii. I bought it for the Wii. And then I also have it on the Super Nintendo Classic. That was what I was getting at by means. And it's really just an incredible game on so many levels. But I think the thing that I really want to spotlight today, especially in the wake of Toriyama's passing, is its art. How good its art is. This isn't organized in any particular way. And I don't have the world's greatest representations of some of this art. But I want to just take this moment to really just reflect on the strengths of Toriyama's style that he had been polishing and perfecting for about 10-15 years by the time Chrono Trigger came out. I don't quite remember what his first manga was, but I do know around 1983 was when he met Yuji Horii, the eventual director of Dragon Quest. And from what I recollect of that conversation, they went to a sushi place and got coelacanth, because coelacanth was just like recently rediscovered after being thought extinct. And that was like in an issue of like Shonen Jump, I want to say, because I think that was where Toriyama's work was being published, which I think for the majority of his career was published there. And that's how they met. And eventually, Horii and Toriyama began working on Dragon Quest, and that was in 1986. Which turned out to be a monumental collaboration that lasted from the very first game to 12, which isn't even out yet. The extent of Toriyama's involvement in 12 is unclear, because because we haven't seen hide or hair of any gameplay from 12. The only thing that we really know is that it's a darker story than we've seen in the series in the past. So who knows what that looks like with Toriyama. But from Dragon Quest 1 through 11, plus dozens of spin-offs, we've had the Toriyama style in that iconic role-playing franchise. And it was that collaboration that eventually led to Chrono Trigger. And let's talk about his character design. So as I was saying, he had about 10-15 years, since I don't quite remember when he started drawing professionally, to perfect his style. And I genuinely think that everything that he had done is perfection in Chrono Trigger. And you can see it in Chrono. I mean, Chrono is basically Goku. The hair is the exact same. The blue tunic could be almost a gi. He's not that far removed from what Goku looks like. And in some ways, he's not that far off from what Randy in Secret of Mana looks like either, which is a cousin of sorts to Chrono Trigger. But despite that sameness, Chrono still stands out as a unique character. And when you look at his sprite work, especially, he's a great silent protagonist. One of the best silent protagonists in any role-playing game with one. I just think that everything comes together for Chrono to really stand out and cross beyond his similarities to other Toriyama heroes to be his own thing. I mean, his look is iconic. I can't argue that. And then we have Magus, who we think is the antagonist for quite a while, until he's not. And then he's in your party. And he's just a splendid design. I really like the way that he has a scythe, the way his leather armor works with his various other colors. He just looks good. He's a great anti-hero. And once you get to understand his motivations, like, you kind of get him. There's another Chrono. Different art. This is the original Super Nintendo art of Chrono, if I remember correctly. This, like I said, this is going to be so random. But, like, just looks good. And he looks like a good hero. This, I believe, is a cell from the animated cutscenes for the PS1 version that eventually have gotten ported to the DS and Steam versions. I don't know if he actually drew this. Toriyama has lots of assistants, and if this was in the animated stuff, this was probably by Toei. I think they're the ones who did the animation. I don't quite remember. But here you get to see all of the characters together, and they're really charming. And you can tell each of their personality traits really strongly. Like, Meryl is very excited, but also loves Chrono. And Aya is thrilled about food, and Frog is stoic. And Luca is just chill nerd. She's got chill nerd vibes. And Robo, even though he's a robot, even he has some personality here. This little scene of Chrono and Ayla hanging out in the speeder that they used to race Johnny. Like, that's just cute. So here's Ayla. This is her PS1 art, if I'm not mistaken. And one thing about Toriyama that and this is just kind of a prevalent issue with a lot of video games in general, and I would even argue anime and manga, is that they don't really do muscles for women the same way they do muscles for men. So, Ayla is the strongest character in this game. but you could barely tell by the way that she's drawn. But despite that, I absolutely adore Ayla in terms of her personality, and she's always in my party. Like, I just love the way that her sprite looks as she runs around and absolutely demolishes things. She's just great. And then this is our original Super Nintendo art. And then Frog. Frog has such a great story, but I think this is one of Toriyama's best ever designs. Because it does take that monster-y element that he's so good at, amplifying elements of animals, but uses that incredible skill of his on a protagonist character. Because Frog is very important, and he has so much that has gone on, both externally and internally. He's such a complex character, who feels constantly disappointed about not defending Cyrus and the Queen, and feels inadequate despite the fact that he does great things. And Chrono entering his life is able to allow him to see his greatness and be able to do more. And despite this mutation that he has been given by Magus, that doesn't go away when Magus joins the party. So it's so good. I just think Frog is fantastic. A fantastic design. And then there's Luca. Luca, in terms of the women in Chrono Trigger, she's my favorite design. I think she's such a strong design. And she's a character that I really like the personality of, because the way that Chrono Trigger works, it does have this slight element of a love triangle between Chrono and Meryl and Luca. And Luca and Chrono have known each other for a long time. They've been like childhood friends. So you can kind of see the longevity piece of Luca might having some feelings for Chrono that Chrono doesn't really acknowledge the same way. And again, silent protagonist makes that difficult. But Luca doesn't let that define her. What defines her is her ability to work with machines and her ability to fix. And that's actually a very important element that relates to her because of what happens to her mother in the main timeline before you can fix that and adjust it. So Chrono Trigger deals with some really traumatic things. Her mother, Luca's mother, was mauled by a machine that Luca made and couldn't turn off. And that's one of her biggest regrets, is that her mom is not able to walk anymore because of that. And Chrono Trigger lets you help Luca resolve that, repair that in a way that she never could by doing machines, by traveling through time. It's a really cool thing. But ultimately, like, her design is perfect. She's got some futuristic elements about her that show how technologically minded she is, but she's still practically dressed, and ultimately is probably the best woman character in the game, because Ayla's got everything hanging out, so she's very fan servicey, and Meryl is very coded feminine. But Luca is able to exist in a space between those two extremes and thrives in that space. And then here's Magus's other art. And then art of him when he is the prophet. Alright, there's Meryl. I'll zoom out a little bit because these are not very high quality. I need to get new scans, obviously. I think Meryl's also a great character, despite the fact that she is a princess and she's coded to be a princess. She gets captured once, I think just once, yeah. And Once she joins your party, she's very effective with a crossbow and with ice magic. But she does kind of fall into the tropes that women tend to fall in role-playing games, especially this time period. She's one of the healers. She doesn't do as much damage. But despite that, I really like Meryl. I like her personality a lot. I think she's definitely more defiant in the princess role, but she's still very coded to be that type of character. But I do appreciate the fact that she breaks out of a lot of the more traditional tropes about the princess that gets captured. And then here's the higher quality art of her. Let's go back. Let's do Robo before we get into more stuff. So Robo's art is essentially the same between the two. There's not very many differences beyond the steam. But Robo's a great mech design. I think that Toriyama had done some really solid work with mechs that I don't think it's appreciated as much as it should. And Robo is one of the best that he came up with. I just think that this is a incredible looking robot. And especially when in his sprite work, he's so personalified for something that doesn't have a personality, really. He's just got great animations and fits a really important role in the party. Alright. I want to end on touching on, I think, what is Toriyama's best work in the entire time he was alive, which is the art for Chrono Trigger. That's like these scenes of the party together doing things. So this eventually became the Super Nintendo box art. This is concept work because Meryl does not have fire magic. Luca does. But even though this is concept work and it ended up on the box, it still really personifies what Chrono Trigger is about. It's about fighting interesting monsters in interesting locations, but you're doing it with team-up attacks. That's something that hasn't been done a lot by the time Chrono Trigger came out, is the ability to team up with other members of your party. And that's one of the things I adore about Chrono Trigger's mechanics, is that element, because it makes your party matter. It makes what you do in terms of who you're with important. And this really highlights that. This is a wonderful piece. And again, I need to get higher quality Chrono Trigger art like yesterday. But this is just great because it shows so much about all these characters just by looking at it. Chrono's asleep, for example. Frog is tripping over books because he's a little bit clumsy. Luca is working on Robo trying to fix something that's wrong with him. And then Meryl is being supportive. I mean, it captures everything about these 5 characters. Ayla's not here that I can see. Maybe she's lurking in some piece that I just can't really tell where she is. But this is just a wonderful composition that I really like. Here's another example of how the party system kind of works, with Robo holding on to Ayla and Chrono on the back while they're trying to fight in Monster Town, I'm gonna guess. And again, look at these monsters. They're so good. Like, their faces are perfect. I love the monsters in Chrono Trigger. They're so good. This is a really moody shot that actually ended up on the back of the the Super Famicom box of Ayla and Chrono and Robo going to the Tyranno lair. I love how Toriyama broke outside the limits of his box on all of these. Like, there's a box, but all of them are breaking it. And I think that's just really clever. That these illustrations are not confined to these 4 borders. I love that about them. And the colors on this are fantastic. Like, you can still know that's Chrono because of his bright red hair. And, like, the faces of the pterodactyls, I forget what their Chrono Trigger name is, are great. And, yes, you can even see a butthole on the one Ayla is riding. Just attention to detail. And then, of course, the Epoch. This is a great picture. Great illustration. Because, like, Luca's having the time of her life. And Frog is terrified. And Chrono is going way too fast. Like, again, Toriyama's expressions are just perfect. I love this piece. It's a favorite of mine. But, honestly, this is one of the best ones he did. Because there's so much going on in this illustration with Robo and Ayla and Chrono taking a rest in the forest. And all of the monsters coming out to look at them and figure out what they're all about when they're not being attacked. But, like, there's just touches. Like, there's food in the middle, an empty bottle, like, just little details. Like, Chrono's pouch that he usually carries is on the side. His headband's to the side. Robo's just, like, in shutdown. Chrono's sword is in the speeder. So, even though this is concept work, because there wasn't really a forest with the speeder, because by the time you actually get to the future, there is no forest. But it's just lovely. It just builds so much personality, and it carries into the game, even though some of the scenes do not. Here's another battle sequence. With Robo and Frog and Chrono this time. And here they're in water, so you can just, like, the fact that their feet are half underwater is just a really cute observation. And then Robo's got a lantern to light up the dark. But you see a lot of the enemies that would eventually be in the game in here. And it really highlights the exploration of dungeons and caves. That makes such a impact in how Chrono Trigger works. And then here's the showdown with Magus. With Luca and Frog and Chrono all fighting together. This is absolutely not where this took place. But I think it really does set the mood, and that fight is one of the most memorable in the game. So clearly this was an important moment for them to capture, and they nailed it quickly. But one thing I really like is that Luca has a sweat bead, so she's nervous. While Chrono looks extremely determined and Frog is in a defensive stance, just knowing what this guy's all about. It's like these characters, even in these illustrations that are before the game's probably even been fully written, just express so much about how they actually are in the game. It's really incredible when you think about it. This is just lovely. This is a shot of Chrono and Meryl on a date of sorts. With her reacting to the necklace that eventually would send her through time. And just look at how happy both of them are. They are thrilled to be together in this moment. And like the details with the little bugs observing them and all that, it's just so good. This was done after a lot of that concept work. I don't know when it was done or who it was done for, but this is like a special illustration. And all of the characters are reacting to Chrono powering up, which is just hilarious. Like Meryl is freaking out, Ayla's freaking out, Luca's freaking out. It's great. There's just so much personality in Toriyama's work with Chrono Trigger. I'm gonna miss that man. I really am. Looking at that art just really emphasizes how good Toriyama was at what he was doing. At that point, he had already earned like the mangaka distinction with his work on Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dr. Slump. just all pivotal things. And then Dragon Quest launched him into an entirely new medium with video games. And then here comes Chrono Trigger. In my opinion, his masterpiece. The game where all of the things that he had done in his career just came together beautifully and just stands as a testament to how good he was at what he at his craft. Like, just looking at this box art, and like, again, the personalities on display are just there. You can just look at these 6 characters. I thought Magus was on there for a second. He is not. These 6 characters, and just like, there's so much about them immediately that just leaps out to you. It's still odd thinking about the fact that he's gone. You know, there's just some people that you just don't think are going to die because of the impact they've had. And Toriyama was definitely one of those in the art field and entertainment. Just his influence will be felt for years, if not decades, to come. Because he was that good. He was that prominent in what he did. And Chrono Trigger really highlights how skilled, how proficient, how excellent he was. And I'm just glad that it exists. I'm glad that this game exists with his work, because I just adore Chrono Trigger so much. And a major reason for that is because of him. And I could say that for Dragon Quest too. I wanted to specifically highlight Chrono Trigger to really kind of push home that fact that this game needs to be on modern consoles too. Its current absence really sucks. And I don't know why Square-Enix is choosing not to. I don't know if it's a licensing thing or what. But, you know, we've got everything else Chrono. Radical Dreamers is out there with Chrono Cross, and yet Chrono Trigger is not available on all platforms. It's baffling to me. And the best thing that Square-Enix could do to pay tribute to a man who laid so much of their success, put this out on the Switch, the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series. Do it yesterday. Pay tribute to Akira Toriyama, because he did so much for Enix. He did so much for Square, with Chrono Trigger specifically. And now, as a merged company, just imagine where they would be without Toriyama. The least they could do is bring the greatest game that he had his hands on out on consoles. So I hope they do. I hope they do sooner than later. I think we've touched all the bases here. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful set of days until we see each other again. Take care.